last time we have discussed about the man instrumentation system, and we were discussing how the man instrumentation system, it is, I think my presentation is not visible. Okay. So how this man instrumentation system, it is useful, how it is different from the conventional instrumentation system, what you might have studied in our regular electronics engineering subjects. Okay. Okay. So how this man instrumentation system, it is different than our regular instrumentation system that we were discussing in the previous lecture. Then what are the different types of parameters we measure in case of biomedical instrumentation measurements? Okay. Now today we'll discuss about the bioelectric signals. What are different types of bioelectric signals? Okay. And how do we measure it? What are the notations and so on? And later in the later part, we will see how these bioelectric signals are actually generated. And as I have told you earlier also, the there are we'll see in today's lecture there are different types of bioelectric signals, but particularly as per our syllabus, our focus it will be mainly on ECG and EEG. That is the electrical signals generated by the activity of the heart and activity of the brain. So that is main part in our syllabus, but apart from that there are many bioelectric signals. So let us see what are those. Okay. Now you might have heard this word biometrics. So biometrics, it is different from biomedical signals actually. So biometrics is the branch of science that deals with the measurement of physiological variables. So physiological variables like thumbprint or face recognition and so on, that is what we use in case of biometrics. But in case of when we talk about biomedical signals, these are the signals used for extracting information on biological system under investigation. So the biological system under investigation. Last time we have discussed the different types of biological systems like cardiovascular system, right? There are many different types of systems involved in our body, and those systems are just like some engineering branches, how they are working. Okay. So the biomedical signals are the electrical signals produced because of some biological systems which are under investigation. Okay. Now let us talk about the different types of sources of biomedical signals. Now the first very important biomedical signal, it is the bioelectric signal. So these are the electric signals generated because of some our biological systems in our body. For example, nerve cells related to the nervous system, or the muscle cells related to our muscles. When some physical activity happens, then these muscle cells, they produce some electrical signal, and that we call it as one of the bioelectric signal. Now as well as a part of working of our nervous system, our brain, it generates the brain cells, we call it as the nerve cells, they generate some electrical signals. So these type of signals are bioelectric signals. Now the source of this bioelectric signals is the cell membrane potential. So later on, we'll discuss this in more detail. These cells corresponding to these nerves and nervous system and the muscular system, they produce some potential, so called as the cell membrane potential, which under certain conditions may be excited to generate an action potential. Okay, so that means when these cells are stimulated or they perform some action, then corresponding to that action some electrical signal is generated, so that is called as the action potential. So for example, if I am lifting some weight with the help of my hand, the muscles, they get triggered. That means some action is being performed with the help of these muscles, and because of that some potential will be generated. So that's why the name action potential. So the electric field generated by the action of many cells together, it constitutes the bioelectric signal. Now, when I say the action potential is generated by some cell, okay. Now, when we talk about a single cell, but this, there are number of cells which are working together in a group, right? Now, all these cells are triggered together to generate a potential, and that potential of all these cells as a group, it is called as bioelectric potential. So the examples are ECG and EEG. So ECG stands for electrocardiograph and EEG stands for electroencephalograph. So electrocardiograph, as we have discussed many times, it is corresponding to the heart, and EEG corresponding to the brain. So these are the bioelectric signals. So these are electric signals generated because of various activities of our biological system of the human being. Okay. Then next, bioacoustic signals. Now acoustic means it is related to sound. So these are actually the sound signals. Now you know, when our heart beats, now the beating of the heart, it produces some sound, and you must be aware that the doctors, they use stethoscope. So stethoscope they use to hear the sound produced by our pumping of the heart, and with the help of that sound they perform diagnosis of any disease. Okay, so those are the acoustic signal, bioacoustic signals, that is the sound produced because of biomedical phenomena. Now this type of sound, it is produced because of the flow of blood which happens in case of heart activity, or in case of breathing, we inhale and exhale air using our lungs. So the activity of lungs and this breathing technique, it produces sound signal because of the flow of air. So this is also example of bioacoustic signals. Okay. Then next, biomechanical signals. So these are the signals of mechanical nature. That means some mechanical movement. Okay. For example, when we are breathing, our heart muscles, not heart muscle, the chest muscles and the related bones, they compress and expand, and some motion takes place there because of that. Okay, so that type of motion, it is the biomechanical signal. So it includes the motion and displacement signals, pressure and flow signal. So the displacement signal, pressure and the flow. produced because of these mechanical activities. As I said, the example is the movement of chest wall. Movement of the chest wall. So that is example of this biomechanical signal. Then next is biochemical signals. So these are the signals which are obtained as the result of chemical measurements from living tissues or from samples analyzed from the laboratory. So this is actually the you must have seen we use the pathological laboratories. So what these pathological laboratories they do, they take some uh, sample from the living tissues and they analyze the chemical composition of that, and based on that they give different reports. Okay, so that is, those are these biochemical signals. That is the result of chemical measurements from the living tissues. Okay, examples are measurement of carbon dioxide. P stands for the partial carbon dioxide, partial pressure of oxygen, that is PO2, and concentration of various ions in the blood. Next, biomagnetic signals. Okay, you might have heard our various types of organs, they produce some weak, very weak magnetic fields. The organs like brain, heart, or lungs, they produce a very weak magnetic field, and that is actually this biomagnetic signals. The measurement of these signals provides information which is not available in other type of biosignals as bioelectric signals. Okay. So the biomagnetic signals may provide some additional information to doctor, which is not possible to get from bioelectric signals. So the example is magnetoencephalograph. Magnetoencephalograph signals which are available from the brain. So these are biomagnetic signals. Next, biooptic signals. So these signals are generated as a result of optical functions of the biological systems which occur either naturally or induced by a measurement process. So that means might be some external stimulation may be given to our eye, like sudden flash of light, and because of that flash of light, the signal, what are the some optic signal which is produced, that can be measured. Examples of these type of signals are blood oxygenation. You must have seen nowadays we use that pulse oximeter to measure the oxygen, right? And nowadays at many places, because of this corona, you might COVID thing, you might have seen it. So it uses our thumb, and there is some light incident, and the transmitted and scattered light, it is measured with the help of some optical, there is some electronic circuit there, the light is incident and the scattered light is measured, and the measurements from the scattered light, that gives us the information like the oxygen content and so on. So that is, those are these optical signals, bio-optic signals. Then bioimpedance signals. So this is actually our human tissues or any tissues of any biological system has certain impedance because of the particular composition. That means the blood distribution or the volume of liquid and so on. So because of that, the impedance may be different. So this impedance can be measured by using some instruments. Okay, so in this case, you apply some sinusoidal voltage to the tissues, and we measure the current flowing through the tissues, and by taking the ratio of voltage and current, we measure the impedance. So this is bioimpedance signals. So the example of this is GSR, that is galvanic skin resistance. So as I said, the bioimpedance signal is obtained by injecting a sinusoidal current in the tissue, and we measure the corresponding voltage drop generated by the tissue, and we find out the impedance. So that is bioimpedance signals. Now, so we have discussed the different types of signals, biomedical signals. Okay, but as I said, okay, we'll be in our subject we'll be studying mainly ECG and EEG, which are the electrical signals, the optical signals, mechanical signals, chemical signals, and so on. So those things are not in the scope of our syllabus. So ECG and EEG. So that is our main thing, heart system and the nervous system. Okay. Now here some human photograph of some human being is shown, and all different types of signals what we have discussed till now, those are shown here. Okay, so let us start one by one. So the first one, it is magnetoencephalogram. Magnetoencephalogram. So this is a magnetic signal, biomagnetic. So this is the magnetic signal related to our brain or the nervous system. Okay, this is denoted by symbol MEG, magnetoencephalogram, MEG. Then related to the nervous system, we have electroencephalogram. So that is EEG. So this is when you say electroencephalogram, it is the electrical signal related to our brain, whereas magnetoencephalogram, it is the magnetic signal, the measurement of magnetic field related to brain. So encephalo means it is the nervous system, that means the brain. M means magneto, E means electric. Gram stands for the measurement. Okay. Then electrooculogram. So electrooculogram, it is EOG. This is called as, the short form for this is EOG. So this is related to the eyes. Okay. Next is ECG, that is electrocardiogram. It is related to working of cardiovascular system, and it is the electric signal. Okay. Then next it is impedance pneumography. So as we have seen earlier, this is actually the impedance signal. This comes under the category of impedance. Okay. Pneumography means related to air. So there are some equipments which measure the impedance and from this measurement of the impedance, some information about the air which is entering inside the body and air which is leaving the body, that means the volume. So that volume can be estimated. Volume of the air can be estimated using this. So that is called as impedance pneumography. Then next, electromyogram. So this is EMG. So electromyogram, this is related to our muscular system. So when we perform some physical activity, so our muscles, they produce some electric signal and which can be measured. So it is also bioelectric signal. So that is EMG, electromyogram. Then pulse oximetry. So this pulse oximetry, we keep our thumb on some instrument and it measures the oxygen content. So this is what we do nowadays, that we keep your thumb on that small instrument which emits certain lights, and from the reflected light or the scattered light, the heart rate or the oxygen content, it can be measured. So that is this pulse oximetry. Pulse rate, again this is related to cardiovascular system, and it is measured with the help of some light effect. That's why it is bio-optical. Okay. Then on the right hand side again, EEG, that is electroencephalograph. This we have already discussed. Then respiratory parameters, that is related to pulmonary system. Esophagus temperature. Then phonocardiogram. This is also denoted by the letter PNG, PCG. PNG is Pune. PN Gadgil. It's not PN Gadgil. Phonocardiogram. So it is PCG. So this is related to the measurement of sound signals produced by the pumping action of our heart. So it is actually measurement of heart sounds. Then blood pressure, it comes under the category of biomechanical and related to cardiovascular system. Next, again, measurement of blood flow might be in terms of volume, liters, how the blood is circulated in our body. Again, it is under the category of biomechanical. Then galvanic skin resistance, called as GSR. So that is impedance measurement of the skin. It comes under the category of bioimpedance. Okay, so these are all different types of biomedical signals we have discussed, right? Now this diagram here, it shows the frequency and amplitudes of all these different types of bioelectric signals. So on the x-axis, it is the frequency in hertz, 10 raised to 0. That means here it is 1 hertz, 10 hertz, 100 hertz, 1000 hertz, and so on. Okay. And on the y-axis, it is the amplitude of this. Okay. Now, usually the amplitude, it's very small. The output of the water output we get in the form of electrical signals from various parts of our body, the amplitude is usually very small. It starts from microvolts to maybe millivolts, or in some cases in the range of 1 volt. 1 volt is very rare. Okay. So some of the bioelectric signals are shown in this diagram. Electroretinogram, that is related to the retina of our eyes. Electromyogram, that is related to the muscles activity. Electroencephalogram, related to the brain. Electrocardiogram, related to the heart activity. Then cerebral potentials, intracranially recorded. This is again related to the brain. Then cell potentials, resting and action potentials. This we will discuss now. So these cell potentials are actually the potentials when we consider a group of cells as a total, in total. So that is the cell potentials. It has two parts, the resting potential and action potential. Now, in the next part of the presentation, we'll discuss in detail what exactly we mean by resting potential and action potential. In short, resting potential means without any activity, when those particular organs are in the resting state, that means the steady state, whatever is the potential, that is the resting potential. And action potential means when that particular organ is stimulated or some action is being taking place, so that is called as the action potential. We'll discuss this in more detail. Magnetic biosignals, this we already discussed. Some of our organs generate weak magnetic fields. Okay, so corresponding magnetic biosignals are MNG, magnetoneurogram, and magnetoencephalogram. Then related to muscle cells, it is magnetocardiogram and magnetomyogram. When we say EMG, it is electromyogram. M means magneto, E means electric. Okay. Now this diagram again shows the amplitudes of various various magnetic strengths. Okay. Let us start from the bottom. Squid system noise level. So this squid system noise level, this is actually the principle of some equipments which measure very weak magnetic fields. So that is the squid system noise level. Okay, it is 10 raised to minus 15 Tesla. So it is in the range of femtosla. Okay, then human brain evoked response. Evoked means when some external stimulus is given, so in response to the external stimulus, the brain will produce some signal. So that signal, it is called as the evoked response. Okay. Then last time, as we have seen, corresponding to our human brain, there are different frequencies, alpha, beta, delta, and so on. Okay. So those are in this range. Then human eye. Now this is the range in picotesla, 10 raised to minus 12 Tesla. Human eye, fetal heart, skeletal muscles, human heart again, then lung particles and so on. Okay. Now on the left hand side, it is listed some of the magnetic fields produced because of some cheap transistor or the screwdriver or some automobile at 50 meters, power lines and earth fields. So what are the magnetic fields produced because of all these different types of phenomena. So this is just to get you idea what is the magnetic field produced because of our biomagnetic signals in case of biomedical engineering. Okay. Now this table, it is giving the list of some of the biomedical signals. Okay. And what are the corresponding sources? So the first point, it is ENG, electroencephalograph, ENG, that is the electroneurograph, and EMG, electromyograph. So the origin of these signals is the nervous system. Then EOG, that is electrooculograph. It is the ocular system. That means corresponding to our eyes. ERG, that is electroretinograph. So this electroretinograph is also, it is also related to our eyes. Corneal retinal position. Okay. Then ECG, this is about the cardiovascular system, working of the heart. Pulse rate, it is again cardiovascular system, that is the source. Blood pressure, blood flow. So these are all different signals related to cardiovascular system. Okay. Then PCG, related to the heart valves. P means phono. Just now in the previous slide we have seen PCG stands for phonocardiogram. Okay. So this is related to the movement of our heart valves. So movement of our heart valves, it generates some sound. So that is phonocardiogram. Then EMG, it is again related to the muscular system. Then the last one, EGG. So this is not egg. This is related to our gastrointestinal tract. That means electrogastrography. So related to our digestive system. The last one, electrogastrography, EGG. So these are all different types of signals and the corresponding sources. Okay. Now this table again gives the similar list, but the parameters are different. The first column, it is the type of measurement. Second column, the range of the signal. Then frequency and the method. Okay. Blood flow, it is in 1 to 300 milliliter per second. Frequency is 0 to 20. And these are some measurement techniques for this blood flow. Blood pressure, 0 to 400 mm of mercury. Frequency 0 to 50. Okay, and the measurement techniques, strain gauge we can use. Cardiac output, all these are mechanical systems, actually mechanical signals what we have seen. Then ECG, this is the electrical sorry, ECG, it is the electrical signal which produces the voltage in the range of 0 to 4 millivolt and the frequency 0.05 to 150 hertz, measured with the help of skin electrodes. Then EEG, electroencephalograph, voltage in the range of 5 to 300 microvolt, frequency 0.5 to 150, scalp electrodes. These are the electrodes used for this purpose. EMG, electromyograph, related to the muscles. Voltage range is 0.1 to 5 millivolt. and this is the frequency 0 to 10,000 hertz. Needle electrodes used for measurement, electroretinography, then pH, then carbon dioxide, oxygen, pneumatotachography. So this is related to our breathing. How much is the air is being taken inside and how much is exhaled outside. 0 to 600 liter per minute. Respiratory rate used with the help of impedance measurement. Then body temperature. Okay, 32° to 40°, and frequency 0 to 0.1 with the help of thermistor. Okay, now as I told you again, in our subject, important for us is ECG and EEG. That we'll study more in more details in unit number 3, 4, 5 and the remaining units. Okay, so these are common medical measurements. Again, it's the same thing here. ECG, the frequency range 0.05 to 120 hertz, signal 0.1 to 5 millivolt, typical value is 1 millivolt, used with the help of surface electrodes. Then EEG, EMG, the corresponding frequency, signal amplitude. ERG, this is electroretinography. Then EOG, this is electrooculography, measured with the help of electrodes. Now in this unit, the last part of unit number 1, it is about the different types of electrodes used to measure these electric signals, bioelectric signals. Okay, so this was all about the discussion related to bioelectric signals. What are the different types of biomedical signals? And out of that, I told you, for us the important signals are the bioelectric signals. Important means, as far as our syllabus is concerned, we'll be studying bioelectric signals. Okay, now we are going to study in detail about this bioelectric signals. So how exactly these bioelectric signals are produced, how they are measured, and what is how these signals are processed. So that is actually our subject. Okay, now to begin with, let us see how these signals are produced, how the electrical signals are produced in our body. So these are called as bioelectric potentials. So which are actually these bioelectric potentials, these are the result of some electrochemical activity of our cells. Okay, so our cells are made up of having some particular chemical composition, and because of some changes in the chemistry inside the cells, when they are excited, there is some chemical composition of these cells, some change occurs, and because of that change it gives rise to some electrical signal. Okay, it happens when the cells are excited. Okay, so these potentials will be generated only in the case of excitable cells, and the excitable cells are usually related to nervous tissue, the muscular tissue, and the glandular tissues. Okay, so these tissues, the tissue means it is the group of cells. Okay, so because of some excitation, some chemical activity happens and it gives rise to electrical signal. Okay, now here this some diagram shows our cellular structure inside our body. Okay, so there is some membrane here, some semi permeable membrane, that means the outside coating of the cell. Okay, and there are some intra and extracellular ionic currents. Okay, so you can see here, this is our some cellular structure. This is the membrane, and there are some openings to this membrane, and these openings are controlled by some activity. When these cells are excited, these openings, they will permit the movement of ions, positive ions or negative ions, through these openings, and because of that some ionic currents flow inside these cells. Okay, so for example, if you see a nerve from our nervous system, neuron and axon, it is shown here, neuron and axon. So that is a part of the nervous system that is shown here. So if we consider a small part of this, that is the cell. Okay, so here normally under resting state, this cell, it will have negative potential inside it. Okay, so this covering of this cell, it is called as the membrane, plasma membrane. That is the outer covering of this cell. So inside this cell, there is a negative potential, and outside of the cell there is a positive potential. Okay, and this boundary wall, it is called as the membrane, and usually it is a semi permeable membrane that we'll discuss later. Okay, that is the boundary, and this potential, it can be measured with the help of some electrodes. So normally this potential, it is minus 70 volt under resting state, minus 70 volt under 7, sorry, not volt, 70 minus 70 millivolt. That means the inside of our cell, it is negative with respect to outside, and that potential, it is minus 70 millivolt. See, minus 70 millivolt, it is not a standard figure, it's a typical value. The value, it may be within the range, somewhere between 60 to 100 millivolts actually, but minus 70 millivolt, it is the typical value. So this is the potential when our body cell, it is under resting state. So that's why it is called as the resting potential. Okay, so the muscle cells and the nerve cells have excitable membranes. Okay, now excitable membranes means this is the membrane, that means the wall separating the inside and outside of the cell, and there are some openings here. So these openings can be, the characteristics of these openings can be changed by some excitation. Okay, so now when these cells are excited, some energy is expended while expelling the ions or drawing the ions inside, sodium and potassium ions. So when these cells are excited, the sodium and potassium movement of the sodium and potassium ions, as shown here, this movement takes place because of for the sodium and potassium ions, and because of that the potential, it is going to change. Okay, so the electric ion concentration gradients, some changes occur here because of the cell stimulation. Okay, so when the cell is stimulated, the permeability of the cell membrane undergoes a cycle of changes. So after excitation, the permeability of the cell membrane changes, and because of that, the movement of sodium and potassium ions happens, and it gives rise to some electrical signal. Okay, and this is all or nothing phenomenon. So this is all or nothing phenomena. So that means if it is triggered, the complete cycle will take place or nothing will happen. Either the cycle triggers in full or nothing happens. So that's why it is called as all or nothing phenomenon. So this will discuss later again in more detail. So it will be clear to you. Okay. So this cycle of changes can also trigger other responses from the cell on top of the polarization cycle. So later on in the next lecture, we'll discuss what exactly you mean by polarization. Then you will come to know about this cycle. Okay. So this in the next lecture, now we'll discuss what is this resting state and what is the action state and what are the corresponding potentials induced and the graph and the cycle, what we call it, the electrical cycle corresponding to this, that we'll discuss in more detail in the next lecture. Okay. So in the next lecture, we'll discuss about the electrical activity of our cells. When we say cells, that means it might be related to the nervous system or our cardiac system. Okay. So how exactly the electrical signal is generated, what do we mean by resting potential, what do we mean by action potentials, how the cycle is triggered, and what are the corresponding timings, what are the corresponding voltages. Okay. So all these things we will discuss next time. Okay. So that is for today. So I'm going to stop for today now. Now, if you have any questions, I will answer those questions, and after that, we will stop. Any queries? Any questions? Any queries? Please type your roll number in the chat box, because in the beginning you have given roll numbers, but it is lost because there was the signal was lost. Okay, so type your roll numbers again, those who are all present. Type your roll number again. Okay, welcome at the end of the lecture. You'll get attendance. Okay, if you have finished about the attendance, then you can leave the class. If you have finished attendance, you can leave the class. Type your roll number in the chat box.